All right, guys, I think we'll get going here. I know we're still going to see some people trickling in over the next few minutes, but that's okay. Probably best to kick us off and get everybody introduced. We'll do introductions in a second. First, I want to kind of describe what to expect from today, and then maybe help you understand a little bit this interface that you're looking at. I know it might not look like a typical basic Zoom meeting for everyone, which is very exciting. It allows us to do all kinds of things and get engagement from you and let you jump off into areas that you think are very exciting. First, a little premise just about what we're going to go through today. I think it's obvious to us, at least us that live in this world of data and analytics and the cloud and AI and machine learning, there's no shortage of material out there about how to get started with AI and the cloud. And over the past 2 years specifically, we've seen every organization, public, private, large, small, dip their toe in, or at least talk about dipping their toe into modernizing data architecture, automating decisions, minimizing fixed costs for analytics, all the things that you would expect behind a transformation towards AI, being more digital, embracing machine learning, moving to the cloud. And this is great because AI and ML, the cloud, even data, all of it is now a mainstream conversation. I think that's a major milestone that all of us who live and work in this field really appreciate, and it's nice to see us get there. It was probably accelerated by years, I would think, just because of this shift to digital and the remote work that we're doing and the urgent transformation that many businesses, including ours, had to make, and the subsequent evolution to their business models. And so it's really nice. I don't think we have to explain at least the very fundamentals of AI and machine learning in the cloud to most folks anymore. But that's the catch, is that it's really easy to talk about how to get started. I think a lot of the guidance out there stops short and leaves you hanging after that. So what do you do after you've done a free trial? What do you do after you've built a model, your first customer churn model? I think it's really easy to find material out there and get access to the tools you need to try it. I think what we want to do today is help you see beyond that. So we thought, even if you haven't started that journey, I think the materials are out there for you to start. What we're going to help you do is understand what you should be thinking about and where to go beyond that first step. And planning for scale and planning to grow and evolve these programs helps us communicate with executives or sponsors or whoever has to invest in our pilots or POCs, help them understand where it's all going after that initial trial that we're doing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, making this AI journey that we're all inevitably going to take successful beyond those first exploratory steps. So that's our panel today. Before I get into the details, what I'm going to do is describe the interface that you are looking at. So I'll draw your attention to a couple of things. You should see all of us in one of those squares. You'll see the slides in another one. A couple of the boxes I really want to draw your attention to, and I'll start on the right, which is all the related content. So there's a bunch of material about who we are, some content, podcasts that we recommend, some materials and resources for you to go and build your roadmap to more advanced analytics. The two colored boxes there, you can see requesting demos. So we're going to talk about how technology, specifically Data Robot and Snowflake, in the context of this, how that technology can help you get to the point where we're not just trying data science and the cloud out for fun anymore. We're actually making it something that our organization can use on a daily basis. So there's a place for you to request demos of those that will do one-on-one with you and make it personal for you and maybe present back to your team on your behalf. There's also a link to get started. So free trials for these platforms. Obviously, I think it's important that you go and click and see that these are real. It's not just hype. It's not just marketing. These are tools and platforms that you can use. They're very approachable. So if you click on that link, it's a very safe place for you to go start a trial, and we'll kind of guide you along the way. And then the question box. So all along the way today, if you want to ask questions, you want to make comments, you want to share a little story. We'll gather them along the way. If we glance at it and it's in context and it helps, we might answer it as we go along. If not, we'll save it for the Q&A at the end. Okay, so hopefully the interface makes sense to everybody. A little bit about Newcomp. I think looking at the names, a lot of you work with us, some of you don't. So I think it's really important to understand, why you should be listening and who are these people that are talking at you. Newcomp's a mid-sized analytics firm. Our head offices are here in Canada, but we work kind of across North America. From day one, before it was cool, we were an analytics shop. This used to be something it took me a lot longer to explain to everybody, but now it's a lot easier. It's a little more mainstream. Data's cool now. And so, it's a really fun, exciting, challenging place to be. There's a lot of hype out there, a lot of opportunity, and therefore I think our job is more important than ever to kind of cut through all the marketing and tell you exactly what is working, what's real, what are other clients, actually finding success doing. So that's what we're trying to do here today. And we pick strategic partnerships. Obviously, we can't invest in every technology out there. We have to really pick, a good horse in each race. Specifically what we see, with real results. So practically, we have to invest in a couple of partners, and we take those ones and we train people up. These are technologies that seem to work in the Canadian market, seem to work with the clients of our size. And so, Snowflake and DataRobot are massive strategic partners of ours. And I'll introduce the two guys here in a second. Newcomp, just as an organization, I want you to understand that all we do are analytics. And so that is, if you think of the entire pipeline of analytics from left to right, our job is to go source data from wherever it comes from and land it somewhere, organize it. That's all part of our, a data engineering function. A lot of that happens on the cloud. So we have a dedicated cloud practice to do a lot of the engineering, and then everything that's kind of user facing. So whether you're making that data to make decisions or, to automate things that, maybe is too cumbersome or repetitive for a human to do, we might use AI and machine learning. We might use a visualization tool to draw somebody's attention to areas of the business that need highlighting. And so those are our 5 parts of our DNA, the pillars of our business and our practices internally. This is all of us. Oh my, look at those faces. You can tell a lot of Photoshop went into those pictures because now you're looking at us live in the webcams here, and it's not as pretty. I'll give Dave a pass because it's 6:10 in the morning where Dave is. But I'll let the guys actually, you know what? So Dave, I'll introduce you guys just really high level. Dave's an AI evangelist at DataRobot, and Felipe is a data cloud advocate at Snowflake. Those guys, I'll give you a little bit more time. Maybe you want to ask, when we start talking, you guys can take 10 seconds or 20 seconds and just introduce yourselves. Okay, guys, I think let's get started. I think we all agreed that we should kind of back up and be a little humble and not assume that everybody agrees that we should even be doing all of this stuff or that it's even important. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that technology could be accused of just taking advantage of hype in a lot of situations, doing the same old thing with new buzzwords. We add the word blockchain to something and we cash in. I think it's really important that all of us maybe talk a little bit about why we do what we do, why AI, why software. And Dave, maybe you can take a little time to introduce yourself and then get us started.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Thanks, Chris, and hey, Felipe, and hey, everyone listening. I'm based down here in Australia, so it's just past 6 a.m., so apologies if I'm a little slow to get going. But great to be here for this webinar. A little background on myself. You can tell I love my music in the background, so I'm a part-time musician, artist, evangelist, which basically means I have been working with people for the last couple of years, developing podcasts, talking to customers about how they can install intelligence and automation. And why do I do that? Because I do think AI is going to be the most disruptive technology that comes to bear, aside from the cloud, obviously. But why do I really do it? I do it because I think we can work more efficiently and more effectively than we have in the past. And I think we all naturally seek different ways to enjoy what it is that we do. And my part-time, I'm a geek that likes to automate everything in my house, from the curtains to the lawnmower. And I think the same thing can be applied to an enterprise. So we can automate more of our workflows, we can get more answers, and we can deliver better customer experiences to people. So that's why I do what I do. I'm seeking new ways of working and hopefully making people happier in the process.
Bravo.
Wow, very well done. Yeah, I think
that wasn't 20 seconds though, was it?
I don't know. I wasn't counting. It was close. Very well done and succinct. I think we agree. We're all here for very similar reasons. Felipe, maybe introduce yourself and then talk about, that from a data perspective. Why build a data platform from scratch, for example, like Snowflake did?
Sure. So I'm Felipe Hoffa, Data Cloud Advocate for Snowflake. Before Corona, I used to work for Google. I was there for 10 years, and I used to travel the world talking about data, telling stories. And then I made the decision to join Snowflake. I'm really glad that I did. I love what Snowflake has built and the vision that it brings to people. Now, a little bit about me. I love the three things I love the most are traveling, I love telling stories, and I love analyzing data. And in this job, I can do this. I can bring to you stories about data that I love sharing to make everyone's world better. So thank you, everyone, for inviting me and coming here today. And to the question, how did Snowflake start? It was from scratch. These two founders, French founders, they were working at Oracle, and they saw this different world coming, where the cloud was offering them unlimited storage, unlimited compute in the form of VMs, and they thought that someone needed to use this to build a new type of solution, something that would be new, unlike anything that you had seen before, that could use these unlimited resources and bring you the best experience at data analyzing data. And now, starting from a warehouse, Snowflake was first a warehouse, then a cloud data platform, and now it's the data cloud, where we use Snowflake to bring many different workloads, many different partners, but we're all focused on how to make your data more useful to you. Ta-da.
Yeah, that's a good purpose, right? As someone who grew up doing data warehousing, I think that is a good reason to exist. It used to be, data warehousing at one point was a swear word, right? And we'll talk about why that is. But I think the connectivity between having the data available to build these models and then, building on what Dave said, having the platform to kind of take those models and make them consumable and understandable by all, that's a pretty good reason for all of us to exist. Guys, I think, scale, to kind of move on to our next point, scale is a buzzword. It used to mean something. To me, it still means something. I guess maybe it's overplayed a little bit, but in the context of today, I think it's really important that we talk about kind of what I alluded to in my intro, which is how do we cross the chasm from doing pilots and POCs, kind of that easy stuff to talk about with AI and machine learning in the cloud, or even deploying in one department? How do we go from that, one-off, which I think is pretty achievable now with the tools that we have available to us? How do we go from that into, enterprise data literacy and beyond into AI and ML? So Dave, why don't you kick us off again?
Oh, this is a really good question because, scale is one of those things it's like transformation. You can't see it. You can't define it. You can't really measure it. How do you know whether you're doing it or not? Unfortunately, the answer, and I say unfortunately, is it's got a lot to do with culture. And it's got a lot to do with the things that happen within your teams, within the people, that just is how you get work done. I've studied a lot of it and I've experienced it. So in my previous role, I worked for a company called Dynatrace, and they were a leader in application monitoring that brought a new product to bear and completely changed the way that they were working. It's now observability. And I was fortunate to work for a CTO who was very visionary, but he believed in the concept of high-performing teams. And I fundamentally believe in high-performing teams as well, as someone who grew up playing sport. And anyone who follows any sports in anywhere in the world can attest that you just know a champion team because of the way they play with each other, the way that they know where everyone is, the way they pass the ball, the way they execute. It's the same thing when it comes to scale within an enterprise. I think it's your ability to be able to pass the intelligence from one team to another, to work across your silos, to have leaders within your business. And you know it's working when you're able to execute. So what does scale mean? It means your ability to pivot. It means the ability to get to market faster. How do you do that? That's the $1 million, that's the $1 billion question. That's the challenge, right? Because why it doesn't work is when we get stuck in silos, we don't have a vision for where we're going. You have people that, when it comes to data and analytics, you have people that hang on to data or don't understand the outcome of why you're trying to do what you do. And I encourage anyone who's listening, if you've never sort of experienced it before, or you're trying to find a way to break it down, there's a couple of great books by Gene Kim, who is the author of the Phoenix Project and also the Unicorn Project, which is really about high-performing teams. And it's about giving teams context as to why we're doing what we're doing. We install Snowflake and Data Robot, and we're doing that because it's hard to get started, but the outcome will be you'll get faster intelligence so that you can execute on the answers that you're given. So it's changing the way that you work and that you can then get to market faster. And I think scale means at the moment, given the context of the world in which we live, your ability to pivot and the ability to change, which is a requirement when COVID is installed or humanity does stupid things, which is what we're in the process of doing. So it's our ability to be able to make those changes. So yeah, scale is a difficult question to answer, but ultimately it does, and I always come back to this. It comes down to you as the individual. It comes down to you taking ownership and not being a passenger, but actually going, you know what, actually, I do want to change the way that I work and I can contribute to the scale. And that comes back to then helping set a culture, and cultures are defined by people that want to make a difference.
Yeah, I think, and people joining this might have not expected that as an answer. They might have thought we said, yeah, this is a software and a technology problem. But I think, that's just part of it, right, Dave?
100%. Like most executives today will attribute the fact that the software is out there. Data Robot and Snowflake exists for a reason. When we give significant value to organizations, when they realize that they can do it and they can get their models into production, it's not the tooling. It's your willingness to actually install, to automate, to create your workflows and get your models into production, and then to trust and use that information to execute. Too often we also see scale is we have more data than we've ever had before, but for some reason we have more dashboards and an inability to actually execute on the decisions that have been generated. And a fascinating podcast with a leader from PwC as well and a few other partners, but they said, we're 2 out of 10 on a scale of actually trusting data and executing on it, which is awesome for anyone listening, because if all your competition is 2 out of 10, that gives you the ability to be the leading organization and to take advantage of that against the competition. So I think it's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah,
amazing point. Yeah, Felipe, what do you think?
Yeah, well, first I have to say I love one-off projects. I mean, that's my sweet spot. It's where I'm like, oh, Snowflake scales to handle all your data. It scales to analyze all of it. But I love also this question, how do we scale it to an organization? Then the problem goes beyond how much data you have, how much processing you need, but how do you bring in more people? How do you bring in more teams? How do you bring in the whole company? You have to think about regulations. You need to think about data sharing. What are you sharing with your partners? What employees in your own different teams are able to see certain data? Like, yes, data that our company has a lot of value. There's a lot of value we can get out of it, but not everyone should be able to see all the PII from your customers. Of course, if you need to work directly with the customers, yes. But if you are developing ML models to improve your performance, your data scientists don't know to know the PII of your customers. And this is where again, to plug Snowflake, I love its ability to how Snowflake understands these rules, understands the complexity of it, makes it easy to scale, to set up the rules as your organization needs to decide what these rules are, but then the technology should be able to easily adapt to those rules and have constructs like data masking, row-level privacy, audit controls, and that's the only way we can scale to work with, to have more and more people access the data, but only the data they should access.
I think that's a really good point in that, we've seen there were technologies before Snowflake and Data Robot that failed miserably that probably had a good premise, and that's because it was trying to solve a technology problem as opposed to saying, how can we, make the technology more elastic or, like you said, more flexible and dynamic for security purposes or for masking. How can, from a Data Robot perspective, how can we automate a lot of what's being done that was done manually before? But I think those platforms before still relied on this whole network of, other tools or third-party things that we needed to plug into them for governance or for integration. And so what we're seeing now is that, much more thoughtful development from technology vendors, specifically, Snowflake and Data Robot, much more thoughtful in terms of how you go to market. It's not enough to just solve a technology problem. You have to be able to talk to all of those other integral things in and around the technology that make it sticky. Otherwise, it's just another tool, right? So I'll build on that. I'll give you both another chance to comment on that. I think we talked a lot about scale. I think we all agreed that it can mean a couple of different things. Dave, you said automation, and I think that word in and of itself, it's a critical concept, but I think it sounds a little bit scary. It can sound like, the robots are coming to take our jobs. And certainly I think we all understand why that is or isn't the case and in what cases that is. I think could you talk a little bit about that? Maybe the fear side first and foremost about automation, and then maybe the opportunity that exists out there for automation, and turn it from a threat into something that all of us should kind of embrace.
Yeah, the robots are coming for our jobs. And when I've asked that question in the past, so I've worked in AI maybe for, 4 or 5 years, maybe probably a little bit longer. But I ask this question a lot, right? The automation's coming, it's taking my job. And most people will be like, oh, great. Because I hate doing the mundane manual tasks that no one wants to do, and so I hate diving into my data and extracting and categorizing and doing these things and segmenting it, and I hate that stuff. Why isn't there an AI that can do that for you? And I hate trying to create models instead of just actually getting the answers that I need, and therefore I can focus on things that actually humans were much better at doing, which is being creative and thinking about new solutions, things that AI isn't quite capable of doing yet. So AI is not, I don't know where this survey came out recently, but there was another survey that said AI is actually creating more jobs than it's taking away. And that's because as you solve one problem, you uncover different opportunities, which means you have a new way of working in what you're doing. And so you talk about automation and extensibility. I think when people purchase a platform and they think about what they're doing, they go, firstly, what does this thing do? Is it going to solve my problem? I have a problem. I have manual tasks. I have an inability to get the answers that I want. Can it solve that problem? Yes. The second thing that they look to do is they go, does it integrate with my existing workflow? Does it integrate with my tooling? Is it going to make my job easier? And will it make my team's job easier? And you go from there. And I think that's about the extensibility. So the automation is that you're not working in a single platform. You're not working with a single tool. You're working with multiple tools, with multiple teams, which means you've got to get together. You've got to plan out your workflows. And then how easily can you automate that workflow? And in my first week at working at Data Robot, I stole a slide from someone in the UK, and it said we've done more in 2 days than we did in 2 years of analyzing this information. And I swear this was just a random slide that I stole from a POV, and I use that all the time because that's a really powerful statement, because time is the most important asset or the most important premise we have as people, because we're never stopping. It's the one thing we're never going to stop is time. And so how do you get that back? Is you look at ways in which we can automate more of what we're doing. It's not taking your job away. It'll change the way that you work. It'll change your work-life balance, hopefully, but we all know in IT that never happens. As much as a marketer in me, it goes, you get more time back to spend with your family and more time on the weekends. Well, we all know that's crap, because once you've solved one problem, you're working on something else instead, but you might enjoy that one a little bit more. So yeah, I think getting it done is about, when it comes to automation and extensibility, is like how much of your workflow can you automate so that you actually get that time to sit and think. And that's where the cultural breakdowns come from, is where when people don't have that planning time, they don't have that time to sit as a team and think about, hey, strategically, are we going in the right direction? And we do that by letting the machines do more of the number crunching so that we can spend more time as a team thinking about what it is that we want to do. So, and naturally having, Snowflake here as well with us, is we natively integrate from Data Robot with Snowflake. And so it's a good example of like, okay, two software platforms that get together to make a workflow easier for customers. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that scale can mean extension too. And so Felipe, having amazing data and insights is good, but I think you'll see a real inflection on the value of your investment when it comes to sharing those insights, right? So with partners or vendors or even customers. So you can talk a little bit about, if you can, how Snowflake kind of extends outwards as a platform beyond internal value. And then as a follow-up, I was thinking, how do we do that while still maintaining trust in this kind of open marketplace as we open up for automation and extensibility? How do we kind of maintain some semblance of trust? So in a couple of minutes, Felipe and Dave, maybe you guys can talk through that. So Felipe, we'll start with you.
So I'm thinking on the abilities to just share data and just move it between partners, and not even move it. It goes from, hey, we used to want to share data between different partners, and then you send them a copy of your Excel file called March data revised .a.b .final, and everyone just lost control of what's happening, what's the right data. With the Snowflake, and as you should, you can just set up a rule, which is, hey, I have this data set, I have these tables, and I want this partner to see this data in these ways. And now both of you, the owner of the data, your partners, have access to the same data corrected in real time with no question about, is this the latest version? Is this the correct version? No, it is what you wanted to share, as soon as you wanted to share it, how you wanted to share it, while keeping control of it. And enabling that within not only partner to partner, but within a growing network of partners that are sharing, that live in different places in the world, not even the actual companies, but the data in different regions, in different clouds. Someone is on GCP, someone is in Azure, someone is in AWS. How we can connect all of them, that's part of, going to the topic of this question, the automation of sharing data. It's extremely hard to share data well and to share it effectively and to share it securely while keeping track of all the safety controls that you should have and regulations. Snowflake has enabled that. And that's how you can also extend it. For example, when Snowflake shares data of a customer with Data Robot because the customer wants to build a model with Data Robot, we all win from it. It becomes an immediate process, an easy process, and you can build machine learning models out of your data in a very easy way. You just need to want to do it, and then the difficult parts from the past are automated. And I just find that wonderful.
Yeah, I agree, and we're going to talk about a little bit about learning from the past in a second. I think both of you alluded to, why this has changed and why it needed to change. So maybe we'll go there next. I think it kind of naturally flows into our next topic, but this can be a little bit uncomfortable because I think we all have to acknowledge how we got to the point where we are, right? And I alluded to earlier, data warehousing, for example, it used to be, notorious for having false starts and, not being adopted. AI and machine learning, Dave, I don't know, you probably know statistics on how many of those projects fail as well. So, I don't think that has a lot to do with technology. There's very smart people and engineers out there building very solid platforms. Let's dig a little bit into why those things failed in the past. So Dave, maybe get us started. You alluded to a little bit of it. Is that a strategy, a culture thing? Where did we fall short in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I love focusing on why things failed. I think it's an important thing as a team and as a leader to learn from your mistakes. And, as a dad of two girls, I'm continually living like, this is why you don't do this, and this is how you learn from it. And I think teams get more efficient and they get faster and they want to be better when you learn how to get things right, and to learn from your competition, to learn from your own team, to self-reflect and figure out why things aren't working. It's really important, and that's how you get better. And Michael Dale asked a really good question here, and I want to address that question as part of my answer, which is basically saying, look, you've got models that you're trying to put into production, but you haven't been able to productionize it as a live model, and therefore it's not continuous. And that you're saying we have the problem in terms of you're saying that, Michael. A lot of people have that problem, and then so how do you overcome that? There's a couple of things. We talked about trust before. So trust is about like how actually can we break the way that we're working so that we can get models into production, and we do that by breaking things down into smaller chunks. But let me first I'm going to go through like what I think the pitfalls are. There's definite lack of skills, and then I'm going to give you the answers too, or a quick view of the answers. So naturally we've got skills shortage. Sometimes we're also picking the wrong problem. So we go after things that are too big or don't have. There's two parts, I think. One is we go after something that's just way too big and we're never going to achieve it, and then we don't make the inroads that we need, so we give up on it, right? And I like to think of that as like, I'm into fitness training, and so sometimes people make a New Year's resolution and then they quit within like the first weeks. They go, "This is just too hard," because they haven't got into the process of a day-to-day of like getting the benefits from what they're doing. It's the same thing when it comes to working. And we talked about culture as well, and that's another obvious one where it's like, okay, so why aren't we getting these models into production? What's the blocker that's causing the issue? Is it another team that's causing the problem? We haven't been able to break down our different processes. We don't have the confidence to be able to push into production. And then so it's about the trust is about everyone coming together and going, okay, so now we have this problem, and we have context for why we're trying to do what we're doing. If we all have buy-in from all the teams, can we then break it down to make it easier for us to be able to roll things into production, and how quickly can we do that? And that's, again, another reference back to Gene Kim's book, The Unicorn Projects, like how quickly can we push models into production? How quickly can we go to market? And that's a model of how effective are teams. So, Michael, the answer to your question is, and for everyone here, is this is why we do these webinars. This is why we're here learning. Like work with DataRobot, work with Snowflake, work with Newcomp to understand what have they learned from this and how can we break this problem down. Another great example of doing what it is that we're doing is make sure you create your steering team. So you create a group to tackle this particular problem. You create people that want to be a change agent and they want to actually do this, and why are we doing it? And I had a great example from a customer in Australia, Minton Ellison, who's a massive legal firm, and all they wanted to do was work out where are they getting their money from and how are they profitable, which seems like a pretty legitimate thing for any business to do, whether it's a legal firm or anything for that matter. And they'd never been able to figure it out. And the two things that he said, the two critical learnings, had nothing to do with the platform that they were standing up. All of it came down to, why are we doing what we're doing? We need to understand profitability. Okay, naturally, great. Then he identified the problem. The problem is we don't have our data sitting in an easily accessible cloud. We don't have an intelligence platform. We have no ability to get this into production. How am I going to solve this problem? I'm going to create a steering committee with and a working project team with Snowflake, with Data Robot, with my partner. We're going to define this problem. We're going to break this problem down. We're going to set a vision for where we want to be in 2 to 3 years, knowing that it could take 2 to 3 years. And then we're going to break off each little chunk as we go and create a roadmap to get where we need to go. And we're going to do that by getting executive buy-in at the highest level. And every time in any company that I've worked for, and I know this is a really difficult one, and you're probably all going to roll your eyes and go, oh yeah, of course. You've got to get executive buy-in for the projects that you're working on to give you the reason for why you're doing what you're doing. And most of you people who are on this webinar now are probably people that do want to make a difference and understand the value that intelligence can play to an organization. Because if you're delivering something like the ability to understand revenue for a business and that hasn't been defined before, then you're more important than the CEO. So I just encourage you to network and work with partners and help you define the problem, and then get the urgency to go and do something about it. And that's right there sitting on your question on the slide there, which is how do we overcome it, is to understand your pitfalls, to learn, and then to actually execute on it and have the trust and the confidence to do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We see that all the time, and it's tempting to just say, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something completely different or opposite, or change one variable without really understanding, why did it fail, and looking inward and being critical of where we fell short. Felipe, the data in and of itself is upstream from a lot of the modeling and that Dave is talking about, when it comes to AI and machine learning, very dependent on the data itself. So the pitfalls in the past, maybe the pitfalls for AI and data warehousing are now inherently connected going forward. Maybe data isn't well understood. Maybe it's not governed. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a really important factor is using critical thinking about what's my data, what results am I getting, do they make sense? And one of my personal pitfalls on learning from the past is that in many teams, I've been the person that goes, everyone is celebrating a result, and I go like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Did you check for X, Y? Look at this. And I've learned the lesson that a lot of people are not looking for that. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want their party to be booed on. And I've learned to sometimes stay quiet, which is the opposite of what a team should want. And that's also a lesson for how, when you get results, when you build a machine learning model, when you're celebrating certain successes, you should have people in your team that question those results. You should have people in your team that question that data. And you should cherish them, or they will learn to stay quiet. And that's the opposite of what you want. But I don't want to name any specific companies or projects, but you've seen in the news how massive ML projects have failed when they try to automate maybe buying and selling houses. And was there someone that said, wait a minute, this is our risks? And then the worst part is when we automate things with flawed data, that we start discriminating unfairly certain people. Like, for example, what if your whole model decides to not give loans to certain zip codes? Because it kind of improves results, but then you're discriminating people that live in certain zip codes with no real reason to discriminate them. So yeah, it's really, really important to understand your data, explore it, talk about it, look for errors in it, and understand what the ML models that you're building are doing.
I like that. You got to listen to people, and people have to speak up, because I was watching my daughters were watching this TV show called Little Lunch. I won't pretend that you guys know what that TV show is. I think it was airing in America at some point because my friends in America wanted me to go to the school. It's about kids at school. Anyway, the teacher said, bad things happen when good people don't speak up. And I sat there and went, huh, wow, that's a really powerful statement that I've heard on a kids show. But it's a really good point. Like, and it's what Felipe was saying is, that's why you still need humans, because we'll figure out, like, where are the discrepancies? Where are the issues in the data that we're collecting? Where are the problems? And then let's address them and speak up about them and fine-tune what it is that we're doing. And I think also the answer to some of this, and one of the things that Data Robot always aspires to, is to help you with identifying the simple steps that you can take to get started and to get confidence to get going. So find simple little use cases where we don't have too many variables that are going to cause the problem, but it gives you the confidence to be able to go, okay, we did that. What can we do next? And then how do we build? And how do we build? And how do we build? And then that's when we went to the very first question, which was, where does scale come from? By the time you've realized you're scaling, is these little steps that you took to get to the scale. Because, like transformation just doesn't happen. It's these little steps that you take that get you there, and it's the learnings that you take along the journey. So yeah, good things happen. Bad things happen to people when good people don't speak up. Bad things happen.
I'm gonna remember that. That's really wise for a show for tween girls.
That's it. Well, actually, even younger, but very powerful stuff. Okay. There's something in there for adults too.
I love it. We'll look it up. I have an 11-year-old. I'm sure we'll check it out. I promise. And I think, maybe we're better positioned now for that sort of whistleblower on a project. I think when you used to speak up like that, it used to mean, big investments were being thrown away, right? These were big capital investments. It was very rigid what we were building, very linear. And so if we said, yeah, this model doesn't look like it's accurate, we had to tear it down and start over. And I think now, it's with all the cloud services available to us, we're paying for licenses like by consumption or subscription. We can adjust and pivot very, very quickly, double back, redo something that wasn't working and go ahead. So I think, we shouldn't be afraid to speak up anymore. The implications or perceived implications are much less than I think they would have been. We have the ability now to adjust and go forward. And so I'll use that to kind of lead into our next question, which is, what has changed? I think it's important that we acknowledge that we didn't just put a new coat of paint on the old technology and call it something transformative and groundbreaking. That, we've fundamentally changed things behind the scenes. So I guess we can take a bit of a technology spin on this answer. And I think it's important for both of you to talk a little bit about what has changed. So I can start with Felipe, and then maybe we'll move to Dave.
Sure. What has changed behind the scenes? Well, so much. I will start by changing the question to, that's one of the most beautiful parts, is that things that used to be behind the scenes are more transparent to you. Like we should strive for transparency, to stop having black boxes and letting people understand what's happening. Example from a different company. You get an ad. It's great that if the company also tells you, this is why we are showing you this ad.
Yeah.
So bring things from behind the scenes. It's not just watching this personalized ad that's exactly what I want right now. Tell me, what data did you use to show me this ad? Make it clear. We're showing you this ad because you either visited these websites or because you have a profile and we think you have a dog. But bring things from behind the scenes and make it transparent to partners, customers. That's how we're going to build trust relationships where we can use more data to improve people's life while having their trust instead of their surprise of, I think this application is listening to me because how does it know that I was talking with James yesterday that I wanted a new house in Sacramento. And maybe the app was not listening to me, but it's showing me that ad because boop, boop, boop. And that's what I love seeing today, and we should do more is less behind the scenes, more clarity of what's happening and what your companies, we are doing with our customers' data.
Yeah, I think that's pervasive through all of it. I'm wondering, I was thinking when you were saying that, I wonder why that change happened. I'm sure it wasn't the technology company who pushed for that change. It was most likely the consumers and customers and users of that platform who said, I want to know more about why I'm seeing this ad. So, just one more point towards, our us saying you should speak up, and that'll cause change to happen. I think that can also be applied to the projects that we work on. So instead of it being a black box project where we say, okay, we're going to take 6 months and we're going to go away and build you a customer attrition model and then come back and show them, I think we stand a way better chance of that project being successful if we're kind of coaching and letting them in. Come sit beside me. Like, I'll show you how these models are built, how we're attributing weights and biases and that sort of thing. So I think transparency in and of itself, and just being able to be more transparent, that's a massive change that allows us to be more successful. We got about 8 minutes left for the next 2 slides. So Dave, I'll let you speak to this one quickly, but it's an important point. Next, we're just going to talk about where it's all going.
Yeah, I'll go fast on this one then. Well, I mean, what's changed? Everything's changed, and it changes every day. So, and we always say that cloud changed everything. So there is more software available than we've ever had. There's more automation tools available. There's more intelligence tools. It's all there for you. You just need to have an ability to figure out how you'll execute on it. And the thing that's most important, I think, is like, as we talk about what's changed and maybe where it's going, is this hierarchical approach doesn't work. So, and siloed data teams don't work. And traditional structures of teams, they don't work. So either your organization's going to break that model and you're going to look at how you can be a cross-functional team in order to go to market. And when you're purchasing platforms, how do you make them accessible to more than just your own team is the key to making it successful, because you want to be able to have the same conversation with someone. So if you're taking insights from Data Robot as an example, you want to be able to have the conversation with different teams to show them what's happening, why it's happening, in order for you to make the decisions. Because I heard an example recently where there was significant environmental savings. Like, we're talking that these are a coal producer, and they were using Data Robot to figure out that how they can improve the different ingredients that go into producing steel. And they worked out that they could have a huge benefit in terms of environmental savings as well as cost savings, but they couldn't get the purchasing team to change the way that they bought the different minerals. They were stuck in a contract that was too long. And so therefore all this work that this team did to save both the environment and the company money is going to fail. So where is it all going? If that floats up to the CEO, then the team making the decisions on long contracts to purchase the materials should be reprimanded, should be, the decision should come over their head, because where it's all going is decisions that will make the better for a team to be able to execute, or the company to be able to execute, and that's all working together. So where's it all going? Gosh, I don't know. Like every day, we joked around when we first got on here. We talked about fax machines, and then people working at Apple before there was an iPhone and stuff like that. Like, things change so fast. You've got to keep up with it on a daily basis. I just think where's it all going is teams that are the companies that will be successful are the teams that we've already talked about. They're learning, they're adopting new technologies, and they're actually taking advantage of that technologies. And so we're going to see more disruption from companies that can get the culture set, that can leverage tool sets, that aren't just piecing small little bespoke tools together, but they're thinking strategically about the platforms that they're purchasing that can scale and can bring broad adoption to their enterprises. So I think that's where it's all going. And then you're just going to see more disruption, because you'll see people going into industries that don't necessarily belong in that industry, because they've created software, they've created workflows, they've created user experiences that can be taken out of one industry and placed into another. So you'll see a bit of a breakdown of industries by high performing teams, which is why I encourage you to go and study what it means to be a high performing team and to leverage that, and you'll be a valuable contributor to any business that you think is worth you taking the time to do.
Dave, did we put the links to I know you mentioned those books a couple of times. Did we put the link to those in our little linked list there? If not, everybody who's here, I'll make sure that we send it out as a follow-up. Yeah, Google. Okay. Google.
And I just want to say the very last thing. What is, just from the AI side, and it'd be remiss of me not to talk about it, everyone's adopting AI. Where's it all going? You're going to have more of it. If you don't do it, your competition's doing it. So just kind of going back to the data robot point, and the importance is start leveraging intelligence now, because you're crazy if you don't, because the speed at which you can get answers to the problems that you've got, it'll just make you much faster, and personally it'll make you more valuable. So I think that's a key part.
Totally agree. Felipe, 1 minute comments on that. Where is this all going?
Where is this all going? Access to everything is hard. 20 seconds. When I was a kid, I went to Blockbuster and I spent 1 hour choosing which movie to watch. And I had to choose with whatever was available on Friday night, whatever was left there. And now I have access to all the movies all the time. I don't need to leave my house. And that becomes a different kind of hard problem, because which one of these millions of movies do I want to watch next? How does this data get organized? How does this data get personalized to me? And I will maybe spend the same hour choosing the next movie I want to watch and deciding which one we are going to watch together. But what has changed fundamentally is that now I have access to all the movies. So the 2 hours that I'm going to spend watching one movie are not limited by stock, are not limited by local availability, are just limited by the world, the tools, the technology available to choose what's the best for me. So I love that. But it's also not easy.
It's not easy. And when you were saying that, I was thinking back to one of the very first things Dave said. Dave, I have to wonder if there's some parallels between you and your choice of an automated lawnmower and, getting time back in your life.
Yeah, I automated my lawn for anyone wanting to do it. It's actually really good. But I did have the visions of me sitting on a deck chair, sipping a pina colada. But of course, all that does is mean that you move on to automating the watering system, and then you go to automating something else. So it's sort of never ending. I'm sure at some point I get to sit back and drink the pina colada, but that's part of the fun. Like, this is part of why we work in enterprise software, because we like solving problems. And so there isn't really an end. Once you've figured out to solve one of the problems, you get to move on to another one and get that satisfaction of like, yeah, okay, job done. Cool. Now I'm going to go automate something else. And that was back to the very first question, which is like, why do we do what we do? Because this is like, there are so many problems to solve. So, and there are so many opportunities for all of us out there. And so I think it's really exciting. And yeah, unfortunately, my lawnmower, I do walk past it every now and then. I see it cutting the lawn. I go, that's great. I still need to whippersnip around the edges though. But it's still very satisfactory. And then I get to now automate my irrigation instead.
Life-changing. And I think what should be obvious to everybody here is that it wouldn't be good for any of the three of us if we were only talking about how to get started and then kind of leaving you to fail, right? I think it's way more important for us in our roles to say, how do you actually take what we are doing? So whether it's collecting your data and managing it and sharing it with your partners and governing it and making it performant, or building high-performing machine learning and AI models. Step one, I think like I opened with, it's pretty easy to find a bunch of ways to get started. And obviously any of the three of us and our firms will help you get started. I think even more importantly, we are here to hold your hand through the whole journey. And so that's not just, sell you a little bit of software and then say, great, that's a transaction and you're on your way. I think AI and machine learning, this is ongoing. Like Dave said, this is something that never ends. You're always taking on new problems or refining things. And so these are partnerships that I think, are lasting. We're seeing much less transactional business. This isn't just build a dashboard and walk away anymore. These are journeys with our clients. And so I just want everybody here to know that, all of us are here throughout your journey. One of the ways, if you haven't got started already on any of these technologies, is to just go try it yourselves. I think they all speak for themselves. If you want, I think maybe number 2 we could start with. So where we walk you, we'll kind of give you a jump start on the platforms and give you a demo, and you can see exactly how these platforms work. We can talk about why and how they work together. And then maybe we double back to number 1, and you can go do your free trial and go bring in your own data sets, and away you go. And I know Felipe and Dave both have massive amounts of resources and teams behind them where they could coach you and take you forward, right, guys? So I don't see a bunch of questions. There's a couple of private ones I think we answered along the way, guys. So I will say amazing job. I hope this is just part 1 of many. There's so many things that we could talk about going forward. I really appreciate both of your time and insights today. You guys are both doing amazing work. I don't know if everybody here gets to hear about all the things that you get to do on a daily basis, as well as myself, all the clients and customers that you get to work with and the stories that you see. But I hope this was a little peek into that for everybody, and we'll keep doing this series as much as people want us to. So once again, thank you, Dave, Felipe, much appreciated, and we'll let everybody go. So thanks, everyone. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Newcomp. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.